Hello everybody, it's David from Revolution Learning and Development. Taking a look at some more items from my notebook today, and today's subject is communication and specifically assertiveness. And we're going to be taking a look at a very simple model called the assertive choice triangle. So before we get into this then, let's take a look at the behaviours that surround assertiveness, or the behaviours that are commonly talked about when assertiveness is spoken about in training. And these behaviours then, as you can see on my page here that I've got circled, are described as passive behaviours. So passive is often described as standoffish, quiet characters. Then we have aggressive behaviours, and aggressive behaviours is a bit more direct, often described as quite loud, bullish behaviours, sort of raised voice, daring, gritted teeth kind of behaviour. We then have passive aggressive, and passive aggressive is a strange one to describe. Not a lot of people can describe this correctly. So passive aggressive behaviours is one of two things. Firstly, passive aggressive behaviour can be where you choose to be passive with a particular individual. So for example, you choose to say nothing, or you walk away from a particular situation. And then once you've walked away from it, you then start to talk to your colleagues quite aggressively about what you would have done or should have done. But the fact is you didn't. So you didn't resolve the scenario. A passive-aggressive behaviour can also be defined as quite manipulative behaviour, in that you may well say nothing and just hope that people can see from your body language, for example, how angry or upset you are. And let's be honest, if you don't tell people how you feel, they're not going to guess, or they might have a good guess, but it might not necessarily be right. And then, of course, we have the main subject from this session, which is assertiveness, or demonstrating assertive behaviour. So assertiveness is simply known as the art of confident communication. So this is about demonstrating confidence in the way that you communicate to people. It's making sure that you become believable, it's making sure that people can buy into the things that you say, the things that you want. It's being clear and direct, or confident and direct when dealing with others. In other words, if you're going to take a train from Newcastle to Glasgow, you're not going to do it via London. It's looking for the quickest way possible to get to the outcome that you're looking for. And we'll take a look at some behaviours that surround assertiveness in a short while. But what is assertiveness then, and how does it work? Well, if we take a look at this very simple model known as the assertive choice triangle. So the way this is laid out then, the suggestion is from this, that if this arrow at the bottom here represents any given situation that you can find yourself in, I don't know, somebody pushes in front of you in a queue in a supermarket, or you're held up in traffic, or somebody says something a bit out of turn to you. The suggestion is that when these things happen, we tend to have what's known as a gut reaction to these things. In other words, we lead with emotion. And those gut reactions tend to be based around Walter Cannon's theory of the flight or fight syndrome. So we either choose to fight the situation, we stand up for ourselves, we have our say, we would tell people how we feel about them, but we use our emotion to do that, which isn't necessarily assertive. Aggression tends to be led by emotion, not by conscious thought. So fight tends to be linked to aggressive behaviour. The other gut reaction we might have is passive behaviour, or flight, i.e. we choose to walk away from it. We choose to do nothing about it. And these two sets of behaviours are setting in this bottom area of this triangle known as the area of no choice or control. So what this means is, from a decision-making point of view, our body and our brain has already made this decision for us. We lead with emotion, or we lead with our gut, and this is how we respond. And okay, in reality, on some occasions, one of these two responses might be right. But it's making sure, in order to get the right outcome for you, that you lead from what's known as the area of control or choice. And this is where assertiveness comes in. So ultimately, assertiveness isn't a natural behaviour. It's not a natural position to be in. It's a learned behaviour. And a learned behaviour in the fact that we have to switch it on. We have to use it and become more conscious when we use it. In other words, the term is about engaging your brain. Taking just a couple of seconds to stop and think about what it is that you're going to do and how you're going to react. Now, there's some behaviours ultimately that define what assertiveness is, and we'll take a look at those in just a few moments. To help us to understand a bit more about what these two behaviours at the bottom look like, there's some really scribbly notes down here that kind of helps us to try and understand it. So some ways of identifying then passive behaviours. So somebody who might be apologetic, who doesn't get to the point, i.e. waffles or uses lots of words, quite hesitant and quite soft in their language and their approach. Lack of eye contact, and it's often said that passive people don't like to make direct eye contact with people, and also quite fidgety in their behaviour. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean to say that this person will be completely passive. The point is that those behaviours may well give other people the perception that they're passive. So some aggressive behaviours then, described as quite accusatory, or making accusations, subjective terms. It tends to be kind of off the cuff or off point terms. There's no real backup, if you like. Very flippant in terms and sarcastic. Tend to be quite tense and quite loud. Very authoritarian, making demands of people. I want you to do this. And again, that might be deemed as quite assertive, but you have to consider the way that it's said. Staring at people, again, very different, making eye contact, clench hands, gritted teeth. You kind of get the idea. Passive-aggressive behaviour, again, is often seen as avoiding eye contact. So avoiding eye contact with people suggests that you are trying to use your body language to help other people see what you want them to see, but it leaves it open to interpretation. Frowning at people, fake smiling, very dismissive, very critical, moaning about situations or even about people, and again fiddling in there. So very similar in some ways to passive. But ultimately, you know internally that you want to say something, but actually it's quite manipulative behaviour, and the fact that you might be using these things to get a reaction from people rather than because you just want to walk away from it. Then comes assertive. So assertive is seen as using clear statements, for example, so I want, I need. It's making sure that you listen to people. So a big part of assertiveness is trying to get to this kind of proverbial, if you like, win-win outcome. In other words, both people get from the situation what they want, and the only way you can do that is to listen to what the other person is saying. Very firm, not firm in the fact that it's aggressive or direct, it's firm in the fact that there's no unnecessary words in there, but quite warm and relaxed and friendly. Plenty of eye contact, well balanced in terms of the tone of the voice and open gestures. The best way I like to determine or describe assertiveness is that it's just being you. It's using your normal approach with people, but choosing your language very, very carefully. So instead of saying, would it be okay if you do this, it's using statements such as, I want you to do this, or I need you to do this. So we mentioned before, though, that things like passive and aggressive are these gut reaction behaviours, but you have to ask yourself the question, are there times when these approaches here are the right approach to take? Do we always have to go to the assertive area to get the result that we're looking for? And the answer to that is no. Passive and aggressive might well be the right behaviours to use, providing, though, they are not led from the area of no choice or control, or they're not led by emotion. Providing they're led from the area of choice or control, i.e. you've made a conscious decision to be passive or aggressive, it helps you to understand then that in some scenarios or cases it might be right to do that, but provided you've made a very, very conscious decision to do it, you've quickly weighed up the cons and the pros, the benefits of using that approach. And this is known, and it sits in here, as something called transformational assertiveness. It's trying to describe that there's almost, or it's almost acceptable to be these things. As I suppose the old-fashioned way of being assertive was that you avoided these things altogether and completely concentrated on these things. But actually, in some cases, it might be worth thinking to myself, it's right to walk away here. I'm going to put my hands up and say, okay, I'm walking away. Or actually, it may well be the right thing to do to kind of stand up and fight your corner, but only in given situations or right situations, not in all situations. It's okay to be aggressive, providing you've made the choice to do it consciously. And the thing is, though, aggressiveness isn't necessarily always about somebody who raises the voice, uses bad language, grits their teeth, clenches the fists, goes red in the face, has veins popping out of their forehead. You know, aggressive behaviour can be determined by somebody else or perceived by somebody else if you simply raise your voice above where your voice is normally. So if I'm speaking to you as I am now, then all of a sudden I raise my voice to you, I could then be or perceived by somebody else as being aggressive. The point around being assertive suggests that if you remain calm, controlled, and use your normal tone of voice where possible, but choose the language that you use. For example, I want, I need, instead of would it be okay if, or I would like you to. Then people are going to see this as being much more confident and therefore will perceive you as being much more assertive. Just to quickly wrap up this very short piece on this, just a quick reminder then of what assertiveness is. So assertiveness is about being calm. It's about demonstrating confidence. It's about being strong and clear, but not strong to the point of being aggressive, not overbearing. It's about making sure that you are delivering confidence and you're very strong in terms of saying those things that I want, I need. Very clear, very much to the point. It's about asking questions to try and determine what the other person's position is. What do they want? What do they need out of this? Like I said before, it's engaging your brain. It's about making sure that you stop and think about the response that you're about to give, rather than leading with emotion or with your gut. And it's also sometimes often described as quite unemotional. It's trying to, like we said before, not lead with emotion. It's trying to strip the emotion out of it and think a bit more rationally. Check out some of the other videos that we've got on here about assertiveness and communication. And if you want to learn more about assertiveness, you can come and have a look with us at www.revolutionlearning.net. Until next time, see ya.